Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Orbit Culture, Death Above Life, out October 3rd on Century Media Records. The album has 10 tracks, 53 minutes in length, and this is the band's fifth full-length studio album. They are a Swedish metal band. When it comes to the design of this record, I think it's safe to say that this is a very compact and consistent album top to bottom, very much in line with previous Orbit Culture records. The exception on this album from a design standpoint is The Path I Walk, the closing song. This is a very unique and different track. Had this song been in the middle of the record, clearly creating a side A and a side B, I don't know if that would have been easy for the listener to feel connected with the record all the way throughout, because it would have been a huge jolt at the halfway mark that would have taken so much more time and effort to reconnect back with the record afterwards. The track would create the ebb and flow, or would create a divide in the album, and I don't think that's exactly what an Orbit Culture record needs. Previous records, this record, the sound of the band really calls more for a consistent experience from one track to the next throughout an entire album, and that's exactly what you're going to get for 9 songs. The Path I Walk, with its own uniquenesses, works really well at the end of the record because it allows you to better digest that song, almost digesting it at its own as if it was a single, and it also works as a great outro out of the record. So to me, having a song that's so unique, so different on an album that's built on consistency from a band that it's known for its consistency, this is the best design that they could have done, creating a very nice cliffhanger, a very nice ending to surprise the fans as they reach that bottom end of the record. As far as the sound is concerned, this album shows us a lot of the traditional elements of Orbit Culture, but it also shows us some new elements as well. Perhaps not new, but reinvigorated and showcased in a different way. What I mean by this is that the band has always had a wide array of influences, from groove to thrash, to gent to metalcore, to melodic death metal, to industrial. The band has always had a lot of different influences that impact their songs and therefore their sound. I felt in previous records a lot of those influences, while being there within the songs, the production behind the tracks never really allowed those influences to be as impactful, to be as direct, or even to be as noticeable as they are on this one. This is a different album from that standpoint. It's easy to pinpoint each and every single song on this record and see perhaps not only the genre that influenced them, but even bands that had a huge impact on defining what Orbit Culture is today. And this is where you allow some growth within the band and within the record. This is where also you allow the fans that have been there from the beginning to come along for the ride, because the spinal cord of their sound is exactly the same on this record as it was on previous records. Almost that cinematic experience where songs that are larger than life, both sonically and even from a vocal standpoint, and then adding those nuances, adding those caveats, giving them some room to breathe, giving them the right approach and the right pedestal in order for the songs to have a very similar starting point but having a very different finish line. This to me is the biggest change as far as the sound is concerned on this album, and that is going to create some getting used to it, if you will, because the album definitely takes you on certain different routes, on certain different avenues from a sonic perspective. But the way it's presented, it's so well done, and it's such a consistent way in which it's becoming clear to the listener where the band is trying to go with each and every single song, that I think it softens the blow a lot and allows the tracks to be easier on the ears almost from the get-go. You know you're listening to Orbit Culture, you're just digesting certain parts of the record, certain parts of the sound with a much different approach than you would otherwise. Now, when you look at the impact that this record has in terms of changes, the other change you're going to find is within the overall vocal approach, more so in the mix than the actual delivery itself. What I mean by that is that I've always been a critic of how deep sometimes the vocals are on Orbit Culture tracks, almost buried by the sound. And I love Nicholas's approach both on the clean vocals and on the harsh vocals. And I've always wanted the vocals to be, specifically on the clean side, to be a little bit more in the forefront so they're more noticeable, so they can lead the song and not be completely hidden by the overall density of sound. On this record, I found that the mix was better from a vocal standpoint, not just on the cleans, but even with the harsh, allowing them to be a little bit higher up, allowing them to have a little bit more room around them makes them more impactful. It makes the lyrics more impactful. It makes the vocal performance more impactful. And that on its own, it also gives each and every single song its own little fingerprint that has an impact on how you're going to perceive the tracks individually and how you're going to perceive the tracks as the globality of the album. So vocally, this record, while staying on par from a consistency and from a delivery standpoint with previous records, it sounds different because of how the mix comes along for it, delivers the vocals in a much different perspective. That to me is a much better winning formula for this band, for their sound, having the vocals with this kind of approach. Now, when you look at the overall sound outside of the elements that I mentioned of changes inconsistencies, there are two pieces of the puzzle that I want to talk about, and that is the guitar sound and the drums. Not to take anything away from the bass playing, because the bass playing on this record hits the right spots at the right time, not over predominant, not over indulgent, but it's there in a way that helps give the record its right consistency. But the drums and guitars on this album also hit slightly different, more so the guitars than the drums. The drums offer help form that backbone and offer help to how that sense of consistency is developed. That cinematic, that size in a large part is there because of the drum sound and how those drums come across. Now the guitars on this record, I felt they were a little bit free. They had a little bit more energy. They were a little bit more alive, not just creating size, not just building bricks into this massive wall of sound that normally is an Orbit Culture song and sound. But on this case, on this record, I felt like the guitars also played an important role in creating more texture, creating more layers, and therefore making the songs a lot richer. Not necessarily one-dimensional, as sometimes they come across as, but a lot more multi-directional and multifaceted as far as each individual song is concerned. This is not just an improvement on the guitar execution and how they looked at the overall guitar sound for the album, but also an improvement from a production standpoint on emphasizing those elements within the overall soundscape of the record. In some songs, it's so impactful, perhaps minimal, but impactful on how creating those layers within the guitars within a single track is not just giving size to the song, it's definitely making the song feel larger than life, but with substance within it. Great experience, great overall execution, and that's pretty much what I gotta say about this album. It's their best sonically sounding album ever. I don't think they've ever released an album that sounds as good, both from a musical standpoint and from a vocal standpoint, as this one. Having said that, it's not an album that necessarily jumps at you immediately. I honestly feel like this album is a little bit more of a grower than a shower. There are a lot of nuances within this record. They're gonna jolt the listener, specifically the fans of the band that have been there from the beginning. This album is a little bit of a growing step or a growing pain in a different direction for the band, where they're trying to develop their sound even further, push some of their influences even more to the forefront without necessarily forgetting where they came from. So this record is one of those that the more you listen to, the more you become familiarized with the production, with the sound, with the execution, the better the songs feel, the better the songs sound. As far as favorite tracks are concerned, I want to start off with Inside the Waves. This is an absolute banger of a track. I'm going to go as far as to say that this is the catchiest song on the record, perhaps the most throwback Orbit Culture song that this album has to offer. It's just a great track all around. It has great elements. When you think about it, it starts off with a chorus. The chorus is super delicious. It's delicious because it has a very traditional melodic death metal sound to it, and it has the clean vocals that really emphasize it. And the chorus gets repeated ad nauseum throughout this track. The verses are really short. The verses are all about taking you back into the chorus, almost like the verses are just pre-choruses, almost like there's no verses at all. So this makes the song very repetitive. But because it's so good from a melody standpoint, both melody in terms of the sound and melody in terms of the vocal delivery, that chorus really wins you over, and you're almost hooked on it to the point you just want to hear that chorus over and over and over again. So the simplicity of the design of the track mixed in with the simplicity of the approach and emphasizing the right elements at the right time, giving you that mix of harsh vocals in the verses, clean vocals in the chorus, bringing a more almost pop melodic death metal style, very dark tranquility like in certain cases, in certain moments, really sells this song at a different level. It really allows this song to be impactful from the moment it starts. Then we have a song like The Storm, a more driven track with grooviness, but also very driven elements. The vocals hit really well. They help adding size to the track. And the thing about this song that jumped out at me is that it has this underlying guitar melody. And the underlying guitar melody on this song kind of reminds me of an Amon Amarth guitar melody. It's very mellow death, but it doesn't come into the forefront. It's not the driving force of the song. It's a melody that starts off a little bit more at the top, but quickly dives into the bottom, becomes a bottom layer, every so often coming a little bit more to the surface. But it's kind of your guiding light as this song moves along, allowing the tracks to still be hard-hitting, heavy, groovy, harsh vocals really matching the changes in the vocals, but the harsh vocals really matching the heavier moments of the song, which I thought was really important. It has a great solo, this track as well, but it all comes down to that melody and how well that melody guides you through the path of this song and really makes the song a little bit softer, a little bit easier on the ears from that standpoint. I also like the choirs, or the backing vocals I should say, at the end, because it created a little bit of a hymn, of an anthem, and that also plays into that Amon Amarth feel that main melody has. So everything in this track really sounds cinematic from one standpoint, but it also sounds very big and very impactful with that melody really selling you and keeping you glued to the track from start to end. Last but definitely not least, the closing song, The Path I Walk. So I mentioned this song earlier in my review. I said this is a very different track, and it is. It's a ballad. It is not just any ballad. It's an extremely soft and open ballad, really vocally driven, with a vocal delivery that you're not going to hear on any other track on this album. A little bit deeper, a little bit lower, clean vocals, but a little bit lower, a little bit warmer, and at the same time a little bit colder. It's a very emotionally drenched song, very emotionally driven song, and I love the nature of this track. I thought the track as it develops was going to give me a climax almost similar to like One, for example, where it's very soft and then it builds up to that moment of heaviness and power. This song doesn't do that. It does grow, the volume does get a little bit bigger, but it comes to that boiling surface and it never really spills over. There's never really a climax within this track. This track gets as far as it can go without really climaxing, and that's an interesting approach for a track like this, because I thought they were going to take a more traditional thrash metal, groove metal, ballad style sound. If you listen to songs like One or This Love by Pantera, all of those tracks, while being very soft in their body, they always have either one single moment of where the track explodes, or they have multiple moments, normally being the choruses. This track doesn't have either or, and that's what makes the song very unique. It's unique already on its own for being a ballad, but then it's unique also in the way it was written and in the way that it was executed. Great way to close off the album, really working as the perfect outro for the entire record, and definitely one track that a lot of people are going to be talking about because it's very unique for this band to release a song like this. This is it. Orbit Culture, Death Above Life, once again out October 3rd on Century Media Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.